Good morning. Welcome to day 5 of 8th grade speeches. Parents and guests are glad you're here to hear your sons' voice today speak. This is the culmination of 3 months of lots of research, writing, and practice, and we're really happy you're here to hear them. All right, Peyton McNeil is going to open us with a prayer.
Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for gathering us all here today. Please calm our speakers' nerves and let them have a good speech. Amen. Please welcome Charlie Braswell, who is speaking on Formula One racing.
Have you ever been scrolling on Netflix and you notice the show Formula One Drive to Survive? You're interested because you don't know much about the sport, except that it seems to be a bunch of rich people making and racing cars. This lore of the show has impacted the sport of Formula One in a major way. Without the TV show Drive to Survive, Formula One would not be the same sport that it is today. Formula One and its drivers have become much more popular since the start of Drive to Survive. Not only does the show give insight to the races, but it also shares an intimate look into the lives of many of the drivers. The personal connections that the viewer forms with the drivers is one of the main reasons for the show's popularity. You get to develop this relationship because you get to see what the drivers do at home, during the race, and during their free time. You love the drama that the show brings, the races, the crashes, and the aggressive arguments, so you decide to watch it. Once you start watching the show and the first episode ends, you immediately dive into the second, then the third, and before you know it, you finish the first season. You still have 30 dishes in the sink, but let's be honest. When you find that one show on Netflix, you don't care at all about the outside world. You just want to finish what you started. You're even more hooked to the show because you feel like you created that bond with the drivers and teams. Once you finish the whole show, you're hungry for more. And before you know it, you're watching the races live on a Sunday while you should be at church. This was the business idea behind Formula One. You see, the sport hasn't been as popular as it once was, and it needs something to revive it. Formula One was founded in 1950. It has a rich history of races, drivers, and teams. For example, the Monaco Grand Prix has been used in every season since 1950. The two most famous drivers are probably Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton, and the two most famous teams are probably Mercedes or Ferrari. There are 10 teams in Formula One, each consisting of 2 drivers. The teams travel all around the world racing in 23 races a year. Each team has a different performance level due to the cost of making an engine. Some teams get to place well by making a good engine, and other teams lack the money to buy an engine, so they'll buy some from a more successful team like Mercedes or Ferrari. An F1 weekend consists of 3 practice sessions, a qualifying session, and a race. The qualifying session is whenever the drivers try to run the fastest possible lap for the starting grid on Sunday, and the practice session is for the team to get the car adjusted to the track. When the F1 season is in session, there are 2 championships occurring, the Constructors and Drivers. The Constructors Championship adds up the points from both drivers on each team, while the Drivers Championship is just the points the individual driver earns during the season. Some teams dominated the Constructors Championship for many years. For example, Mercedes won the Constructors Championship 8 years in a row from 2014 to 2021. Formula One used to be a pretty quiet sport. Many people knew about it and few watched it. For example, in 2018, the average viewership per race was 547,000 viewers. It's by no means as bad, but for how much money they were spending on the sport, it was not enough. When Liberty Media bought out Formula One's commercial rights in 2017, it saw potential in a show similar to Last Chance U, which goes behind the scenes of the high school football team during the season. When Drive to Survive released on Netflix on March 8, 2019, Formula One saw a skyrocket in viewership. In 2019, the average viewership was 672,000 viewers, which is about a 20% increase from the year before. In 2020, the hype seemed to die down a little bit, averaging around 608,000 viewers. This is where strategy came into play. Netflix decided to release the next season a week before the first race, so people could watch every episode before the season began. In 2021, the average viewership per race was 934,000 viewers, which is a 50% increase from the year before. For Netflix, the strategy seemed to be working. They would record their footage during the season, edit it before the next season started, and release it a week before the first race. By doing this, it rehooked the viewers to Formula One after about 3 months passing after the last race of the season. They used the strategy going into 2022, and the average viewership was around 1.4 million viewers per race. That's about a 200% increase from 2018. The A 200% increase impacts any sport, especially one that costs you a lot of money to be spent on the teams and the drivers. Formula One is a very interesting sport for many. It has a lot of strategy, pace, and teamwork. Formula One was on a downfall during the 2018 season, but a TV show on Netflix helped revive the sport as a whole. Without the Netflix show, Formula One Drive to Survive, the sport would not be the same that it is today. Thank you, and please welcome Platt Solomon, who is speaking on the Great Barrier Reef.
Have you ever wondered about the world's largest coral reef? I am interested in the Great Barrier Reef because the reef is the world's largest underwater ecosystem, the largest underwater ecosystem in the world. The Great Barrier Reef is the world's largest and most diverse ecosystem that faces increasing damages at the hands of humans. An ecosystem, a biological community of interacting organisms and their environment, is like a puzzle. Each piece makes up a tiny part of the entire picture. The Great Barrier Reef is home to 14 different coastal ecosystems, which include coral reefs, lagoon floors, islands, open water, seagrass, coastline, estuaries, freshwater wetlands, forested floodplains, upland shrublands, grass and sedgelands, woodlands, forests, and rainforests. Stretching over 1,250 miles along the Australian coast, over 400 different types of coral make up the Great Barrier Reef. This is one characteristic that makes it so unique. Coral is comprised of hundreds of different types of animals, making it a colonial species. A colonial species is a type of species that has two or more animals that mutually benefit off of each other. Many types of animals other than coral inhabit the Great Barrier Reef. Clownfish, turtles, the great clam, the potato cod, whales, sharks, and manta ray are just some of them. The Great Barrier Reef has an ecosystem that is dense and widely explored. Not even half of the Great Barrier Reef has been explored, which means we are only aware of a small portion of its makeup. Tertiary predators like sharks also inhabit the Great Barrier Reef and balance the food chain. Because of their unique behaviors, humans enjoy learning about sharks and other animals. Many tourists and researchers visit the Great Barrier Reef because of its diversity. Unfortunately, the increase in visitors creates a stress on the ecosystem. Human interactions can increase pollution by moving boats and sunscreen-covered swimmers further, causing damages to the coral that support the ecosystem. A tertiary predator like a shark is an animal that is on the third trophic level of the food chain. A trophic level is a level of hierarchy in the food chain. The destruction of the Great Barrier Reef is an ongoing problem. Coral bleaching, endangered animals, and pollution are three of the greatest hardships the reef faces. Most of the damage done to the Great Barrier Reef is irreversible. However, if we come together, we can try our best to make up for the damage we've caused. Damage is common in many ecosystems because of the human desire for progress and the urge to explore the unknown. Oil spills are one type of human-created damage. Oil contaminates the water and is very hard to clean up. It leads to the death of many animals in the reef. Coral bleaching is another common damage to the Great Barrier Reef. Coral bleaching can happen from a change in temperature, pollution, extremely low tides, and overexposure to sunlight. Coral bleaching leads to coral becoming more vulnerable to disease, starvation, or death. Another substance that harms the reef is plastic. Plastic is a major problem for animals, especially turtles. The main food source for turtles is jellyfish. However, plastic bags replicate a jellyfish, which causes turtles to eat the plastic, which hurts or kills them. We can help reduce the damage by picking up plastic or donating to plastic cleanup companies. There are many worldwide organizations that are helping to prevent the damage being done to oceans and reefs. Companies like the Ocean Cleanup Company help clean up floating plastics led by donations from people and companies around the world. The Great Barrier Reef is the living place for thousands of different animals all coming together to form one of the biggest ecosystems and biggest reef in the world. Providing food, living space, and protection, fish find sanctuary from predators. The Great Barrier Reef is suffering from pollution. The ecological impacts of the Great Barrier Reef affect everyone. People should remember this when they purchase sunscreen with chemicals that kill coral or pollute the ocean. With over 400 different types of coral, diverse fish, and plant habitats, the Great Barrier Reef should be explored. Conservation is key to maintaining and protecting the Great Barrier Reef for future generations and explorers. Everyone should have the opportunity to visit the Great Barrier Reef at least once in their lifetime. Thank you. Now please welcome Raj Patel speaking on Gandhi.
Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, also known as Mahatma Gandhi, was an important person in the Indian independence movement. He was born on October 2nd, 1869 in Porbandar, India. Gandhi was a political leader who supported nonviolent civil disobedience as a goal of achieving social and political change. Gandhi was born to a Hindu family in Porbandar, a small town in West India. His father was a government official and his mother was deeply religious and a humble woman. She was the youngest of his fourth father's wife. As a child, Gandhi was shy and an average student, but he showed an interest in religious studies. Gandhi's education was met with challenges right from elementary school up to college. Despite these challenges, he accomplished his goals and inspired many people around the world. He received his primary education in the city of Porbandar. Gandhi was an average student. He was not pretty good at academics and schooling activities. However, he embraced some of the most important aspects of his education, including good morals. He was also a shy and timid student. Gandhi later moved to Rajkot because of his father's new job. There was a lot of improvement in his performance in high school compared to his elementary school, despite the fact that he married at 13 years old and had to take care of his family. His father later got ill, which added a challenge to his life as well as his education. After he finished high school, he joined the University College London and completed his law degree. Successfully after 3 years during his studies in London, he managed to improve his shy nature when he joined a public speaking group and trained him on how to be a good public speaker. Also while in England, Gandhi met some genuine men and women at the vegetarian restaurants and boarding houses of England who introduced him to religious lectures such as Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, also known as the Gita, is the most revered Hindu text. In July of 1891, Gandhi returned to India. His law career got off to a shaky start. He was not very successful with his first few cases, so he returned to Rajkot to make a small living by writing papers for clients. After a couple of years doing various jobs, Gandhi returned to the law profession and accepted a job in Natal, South Africa in 1893. Gandhi spent almost 20 years in South Africa with his wife, Kasturba, and their children. Gandhi was aware of racial discrimination present in South Africa. He was asked to remove his turban in a Derby court by the European judge, but he declined and walked out. A few days later, while traveling in Pretoria, he was thrown at a first-class rail car and left shivering at Pietersmaritzburg rail station. Later on his journey, a white bus driver assaulted him for refusing to move to the platform to make a room for a European passenger, and eventually he was denied access to the hotel assigned for Europeans only. These humiliations were a frequent thing for Indian laborers and dealers in Natal, who learned to accept them with the same patience they accepted their low pay. Gandhi decided he would no longer accept the discrimination shown to him and other non-Europeans. He found him humiliating and struggling to understand how some people can feel pressure in treating people in such an inhuman way. Gandhi studied the living conditions of his fellow South Asians in South Africa when he was in Pretoria, and made an effort to inform them of their rights and responsibilities. He got into politics to fight for Indian rights. Gandhi first used his method of nonviolent protest in 1906. He told Indians that they should not obey British laws, that they were wrong. He also said they stay peaceful no matter how they were, punished for their actions. The new method of protest became known as a terror, or devotion to truth. Gandhi returned to India in 1915. Within a few years, he became India's most powerful political leader. He led major protests in 1922, 1934, and 1942. Gandhi's followers stopped using British goods, they refused sent to British courts and schools. In 1930, Gandhi led a protest against a British tax on salt. He led Indians on a march to sea to collect their own salt. Gandhi was sometimes jailed for this action. Gandhi was in prison for 2 years during World War II. He and other Indian leaders had demanded immediate independence for Indian prize for aiding Britain in the war. After he was released, Gandhi campaigned to work for independence. India finally won its independence in 1947. It was a great victory for Gandhi, but he was disappointed because India's land was divided into two new countries, India and Pakistan. Before India's division, the country was torn by a clash between Hindus and Muslims. Gandhi tried to make peace. On January 30, 1948, in the city of Delhi, he was shot and killed by a Hindu man. Mahatma Gandhi changed the course of Indian history. Global movements for social and political change drew inspiration from his nonviolence approach from civil action methods. Gandhi's life and legacy still have an impact on people today, and his lesson on courage and truth are still significant. Thank you. Please welcome your dad, who is speaking on University of Tennessee football.
This announcement, a familiar phrase to all Tennessee fans, began when former Tennessee announcer John Ward became the recognizable voice of Tennessee football. From Neyland's Maxims to Rocky Top, Tennessee has known for their rich football traditions. Although their history might not be well known, they have helped build both the University of Tennessee academically and athletically. Three of Tennessee's most influential traditions are the 7 Maxims written by General Robert Neyland, the checkerboard end zones, and most notably, Rocky Top. Robert Neyland was Tennessee's head football coach from 1926 to 1952. During his time as head coach, Neyland was called to serve our country in both World Wars. In World War II, Neyland earned the prestigious title General. This gave him the nickname of the General among Tennessee fans. Because of how influential General Neyland is to Tennessee's football program, the stadium that Tennessee plays in today is called Neyland Stadium. One of the traditions General Neyland started at Tennessee is for the football players to recite the 7 out of 38 maxims that he created. These maxims are Neyland's rules of conduct for football, and most importantly, rules to live by. The 7 maxims are: the team that makes the fewest mistakes will win. Play for or make the breaks. When one comes your way, score. If at first the game or breaks go against you, don't let up. Put on more speed. Protect our kickers, our quarterback, our lead, and our ball game. Ball, Oski, cover, block, cut and slice, pursue and game tackle. This is the winning edge. Press the kicking game, here where the breaks are made. Carry the fight to our opponent and keep it there for 60 minutes. Robert Neyland is not only known for being one of Tennessee's best head football coaches, but he is also known for his inspirational speeches. He wrote 38 maxims that were both borrowed and inspired from his former coach at West Point, Charles D. Daly. Neyland got the idea from Daly's book called American Football: How to Play. It is not known exactly when Neyland wrote the maxims, but now they are a huge tradition among both the fans and the players. Even though the maxims have been recited for a very long time, the date they first began use is not known. The impact of the maxims is long-lasting. Ever since the beginning of this tradition, there have only been a few times that Tennessee's football team has not recited them before the game. The maxims are so influential that in 2001, the fans and former Tennessee football players recited them before the game aloud on the Jumbotron. Neyland not only Maxims, and he also inspired the checkerboard end zones. When he was head football coach, he told his players to charge the checkerboard. The checkerboard that Newland was talking about was a subtle pattern on top of the newly built Arizona clock tower. At the time, Sherwood Rockets Field was small, only holding about 3,200 people. In 1996, the northern upper deck was enclosed, so the pattern was no longer visible from the field. The checkerboard end zones were installed in 1964 when head coach Doug Dickey was inspired by Ryan's dad. He decided to paint it orange and white. Tennessee fans loved the checkerboard, but in 1968, artificial grass replaced the real grass in Neyland Stadium because of the checkerboard to be removed. When head coach Doug Dickey returned for this time as an athletic director in 1989, the checkerboard also returned. This time it was on artificial grass, which most of the fans enjoyed more because there was no patches of dirt or grass. In 1994, real grass returned and the checkerboard pattern removed. The checkerboard pattern is carefully spray painted into squares. In total, it requires about 80 gallons of paint. Many have tried to recreate the checkerboard, but no one has done as well as Tennessee. Outside of football, Tennessee's basketball stadium, Thompson Bowling Arena, also uses the checkerboard pattern on both baselines. Although the pattern has not been around long, Tennessee has definitely made a huge part of their traditions. Bob Cameron, former director of sports service management at Tennessee, told ESPN that he has never realized the distinctiveness of them until years ago. He realized it when he was informed of a poll about the top 10 sports venues in the United States. He goes on to say that Tennessee is in the top 10. This surprised him because other famous sports venues such as Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park, and Wrigley Field were on the same list. Although the checkerboards are famous, Rocky Top is one of the most recognizable Tennessee football traditions. Luis and Boudreaux O'Brien wrote Rocky Top in 1967. The Bryants were known for their songwriting. When they were writing Rocky Top, they were working on a slow-tempo album, so they wanted to write something a little more up-tempo. They wrote the song and were number 388 of the Gap American. Once the Bryants began writing the song, it only took them about 10 minutes to write the rest of Rocky Top. Rocky Top was first performed by the Osborne Brothers on December 25th, 1967. After the performance, Rocky Top rose to number 33 on the country music charts. Tennessee first performed Rocky Top on October 21st, 1972, and the halftime show of the Tennessee vs. Alabama football game. The song was loved by every Tennessee fan attending the game. The song was so influential that in 1982, the song became Tennessee's 5th official state song. Now, the pride of the South Bend marching band performs Rocky Top after every Tennessee touchdown. Because of this, you might not love the song, but you cannot help but tap your foot to the tune. Even though it is not the University of Tennessee's official fight song, it is much more recognizable than Down the Field, Tennessee's official fight song. Rocky Top is also played at most Tennessee sports events. Although Tennessee might not win every football game, the football program is definitely influenced by 3 of its most famous traditions: General Robert Nance Maxims, the checkerboard end zones, and the notable song, Rocky Top. Even if you're not a Tennessee fan, it is hard not to like these traditions. The traditions are influential not only to the University of Tennessee, but also to the entire state. And last, but definitely not least, go Bulls. Thank you, and please welcome Colton Wilson for this speaking from Ghana.
In the South, many people's favorite season is football season. Between college and NFL games, much of our free time is spent watching this exciting sport. Over the years, football has evolved greatly since its inception in 1869. One person responsible for this was a man named John Heisman. Without Heisman, football would not be fun and exciting as it is today. Heisman was born on October 23rd, 1869, in Cleveland, Ohio. Heisman had many interests growing up. His favorite activities were football and acting. Growing up, he wanted to be an actor and play football. This was unheard of then because when you think of football players, you think of mean and tough. But when you think of actors, you think of artistic, calm, and emotional.
People didn't associate acting with football players, but Heisman did. He became a football coach, a football player, and an actor. Heisman played football at Brown University and Pennsylvania. When Heisman played at Brown, he played every position on the offensive line. He went to Pennsylvania to play football and earned his law degree in the spring of 1892. After earning his law degree, he decided he wanted to coach football. He started coaching football at Oberlin and then coached at many other schools, including Auburn, Clemson, the University of Pennsylvania, Washington and Jefferson, and Rice. Heisman was most remembered for coaching at Georgia Tech. While at Georgia Tech, he coached baseball, basketball, and football. He was most successful in his role as a football coach. His record at Georgia Tech was 102 wins, 27 losses, and 7 ties. Heisman changed the game of football. He introduced the forward pass in the game. Before Heisman created the forward pass, players would just run around with the ball and try to score. Passing made football more exciting, but still, only one person could get the ball in play. Heisman then introduced two other aspects of the game, the double pass and lateral. A double pass is when a player gets the ball snapped to them and they pass it back to their teammate. The teammate can either choose to run it or throw it. You can only throw a double pass if you and your teammate are behind the line of scrimmage. If you aren't, then it will be lateral. When a player laterals the football, he throws it back to his teammate. The teammate can also lateral it backward and it can go on forever this way. The lateral is a very important part of football. It is mainly used at the end of the game when the team needs a miracle to win the game. The lateral has been the reason for many exciting game winners that have happened. One of the most famous game-winning touchdowns that's happened because of being able to lateral was the Miami Miracle. The Miami Miracle took place on Sunday, December 8th, 2018. The ball was snapped to Miami Dolphins quarterback Brian Tannehill, who passed the ball to Kenny Stills. The ball was then lateraled backward to Devontae Parker, who lateraled it the final time. The ball ended up in Kenny Drake's hands, who took it 69 yards to the game-winning touchdown. Without Heisman inventing the lateral, nobody would be able to see this amazing game winner, and the game of football would be nothing like it is today. Heisman also introduced the idea of the center snapping the ball to the quarterback. This is when the center is set in his usual stance and throws the ball between his legs back to the quarterback. This is called shotgun formation. The quarterback can also line up behind the center, and the center can hand the ball to the quarterback. This is called under center. Heisman realized that the center wouldn't know when to snap the ball, so he created the head and height counts. This would help the team know when the ball was snapped without having to watch the ball. He also realized that players would need to know when to get set. This is what the head count would be used for. The height let the center know when to snap the ball. The wing tee offense was a creation of John Heisman. It is a run-first style offense. Heisman created this because it would give his team an advantage. This type of offense is unheard of then. So when Heisman would use this offense, he created other teams would struggle to stop it. He went undefeated 2 seasons in a row while using the wing tee offense. When teams started to figure out plays, Heisman went back to the drawing board and developed more plays to baffle the competition. Heisman retired in 1927. He died on October 3rd, 1936, in New York. 18 years later, he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. Heisman had a great career as a football coach, but he never lost his desire to be an actor. In the off-season, he would perform in Shakespeare plays, all while coaching and conditioning his team. Heisman's name is recognizable to most people because of the Heisman Award. The Heisman Trophy is handed out every year to the best player in college football. Some of the most recent Heisman winners are sophomore USC quarterback Caleb Williams, sophomore Alabama quarterback Bryce Young, and senior Alabama wide receiver Devontae Smith. John Heisman transformed the game of football. Without him, there would be no Heisman Trophy, and without his contributions to the game, football would not be nearly as entertaining and fun to play. Thank you, and please welcome Jack Jeets with his sophomore graduation. Bush's name may not resonate with all of you, but he is one of the greatest running backs in college football history. I chose this topic because I'm a University of Southern California fan and was interested in learning more about Reggie Bush and the controversy surrounding his Heisman Trophy. Reggie Bush, a highly skilled running back whose rise to the NFL was marked by controversy, greatly impacted the game of college football. Reginald Alfred Bush II was born on March 2nd, 1985 in San Diego, California. Bush played high school football for Helix High School in La Mesa, about 20 minutes from San Diego. Bush was a star in high school on the track and the football field. He ran for over 1,700 yards with only 140 carries, averaging a little over 12 yards a play. Bush had received numerous offers from Oregon, Texas, Washington, Stanford, Notre Dame, and UNC, where he committed on January 5th, 2003. He led Pete Carroll and the UNC Trojans to back-to-back national championship victories in 2003 and 2004. Bush won the Super Bowl 2010 against the Indianapolis Colts. Bush won the Heisman Trophy by a long shot and was drafted second overall in 2006 by the New Orleans Saints, but then all eyes were on USC and not in a good way. The NCAA began to investigate the University of Southern California athletics after players on campus had been receiving large sums of money to play for USC. Reggie Bush had received hundreds of thousands of dollars from marketing agents, and the marketing agents that had given the Bush family money were not even USC fans. It happened to be ex-convicts who happened to have delusions of being supposed to him. Lloyd Lake and Michael Miles had been giving the Bush family money, a limousine, and a suit to wear for the 2005 national championship game. Bush's family received $300,000 from people that had no association with USC. So he was not even breaking the rules. Bush lost the trophy because in order to win the trophy, you must follow the NCAA's rules. Claims that the investigation was sloppy and was never overturned by the NCAA. He was only on a conference call and they made a decision off of it. This topic is very controversial because it determines whether or not USC has the most Heisman trophies after Caleb Williams won the trophy in December. USC has 8 Heismans if you include Bush's, making USC with the most Heismans. Reggie Bush is arguably the most controversial athlete in college football, or just college sports in general. Bush was aware that he would have to return the trophy, and decided it was best if he returned the trophy himself. The punishments received by USC were a 2-year postseason ban for football, 1 postseason ban for basketball, a vacation of all wins from when the student athlete was attending. USC also had to give up 10 scholarships for 3 years. And also had to have a 10-year disassociation with the former athlete, which meaning Reggie Bush and all other athletes involved were banned from the campus. Bush is no longer banned from the university after the 10-year period. Many people think that Bush was just hiding it and that his Heisman should not count, but the Heisman is given to the most outstanding athlete in college football. Whether or not he didn't know, and he claims he didn't, he still was the best college football player in 2005. Many people say that the runner-up Vince Young should not receive the award soon after the winner. Young was interviewed the following day after Bush returned the trophy. He said, "I definitely won it, but he won it fair and square definitely, and it's much respect for Reggie now. If it's in it over me, I'm not going to say anything to it." Young ended the Trojans' 27-game win streak in the national championship game in 2005. Young scored on a scramble with just a few seconds left in the 4th quarter. There's an upcoming documentary on this topic where Bush will tell his side of the story. Reggie Bush will be an executive producer of the documentary. Bush said, "I hope this film can drive change in the next generation of student athletes. We're making some progress, but there's still a long way to go." Bush played for the New Orleans Saints, the Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, San Francisco 49ers, and the Detroit Lions. He was no stranger to injuries, and he has torn his meniscus once, his MCL and PCL numerous times. He also pulled his calf and strained his calf multiple other times. Bush sprained his ankle 3 times and dislocated his thumb. His career ended after tearing his ACL while slipping on concrete after a play. Bush sued the stadium and received $12.4 million. Bush currently is a reporter for Fox Sports and is working with other former college athletes. The investigation is not over yet, and Bush is not giving up on getting the trophy back in his hands. Some people might argue that Bush should not get the trophy back, but he still was the greatest player that year. Bush was unaware of the gifts his family was receiving, and the punishments received were extreme and affected the University of Southern California
athletic career. Bush was devastated after forfeiting the trophy and went through multiple stages of depression throughout the investigation. Should Bush's Heisman be returned? I say yes, and not just because I'm a UNC fan. The actions that Reggie took part in, whether or not he knew, are allowed to stay in NCAA sports. For that reason, I think his trophy should be returned. The NCAA should return the trophy now that it is legal to accept recognition. In closing, I hope that Reggie will get his trophy back one day and that he will not be a hated athlete for the rest of his life. Lastly, fight on. Thank you.
That concludes our speeches for today. Parents are welcome to come visit for a minute, get some pictures. Everyone else, see you later. Everybody's picture wherever I go. I know, and it's on